Well, a very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, from wherever you're watching us. Welcome to Herman Manyora's YouTube channel, and my name is Evan Sokinyi, of course. I'm so glad that you are joining us yet for another interesting episode of the Candid Talk. Welcome. Well, I'm joined by the one and only professor from the University of Nairobi. And of course, is the most sought after political analyst within the country and, of course, globally as well. Prof, how are you?
I'm good.
Welcome to another episode of the Candid
Thank
Talk.
you, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're actually waiting for the results of the KCSE to be released, but then something happened, and the teachers who were marking the CR papers decided to actually lay down their tools and decided, no, we're not going to do this because you people are not paying us, and plus the working conditions here are not actually favorable. Prof, how bad is it? Have you been, I believe you've been a national examiner in a mark at some point. How does this country do, or rather go about such kind of issues? How bad is it?
The issue,
are the teachers genuine, really?
The issue of impunity and lack of seriousness. When teachers go to mark, they are subjected to very inhumane conditions. They sleep, the marking takes place, marking centers are usual schools. So a man is supposed to sleep on a mattress and a bed which his son uses in school.
Really?
You know, schools, those beds are small. The mattresses are this thing. Then a man, a teacher, maybe his children is where his son sleeps is where he's supposed to sleep. That is. And yet they get money. As if they cannot get a reasonable center with reasonable facilities for teachers to feel they are really doing a national duty. That should be taken care of. Taken to a place with resources where you feel your dignity is not eroded. How can you be forced to sleep where children sleep? You remember some of them are even still wetting their beds. That's what they do to teachers. And that's a fact. I've gone through it, I know. And let's not talk about payment. Not just in terms of how much, but in terms of how long it takes, the frustration they are in. So really marking, that's why not many people mark. People mark once, twice, they go away. Let the Kenya National Examination Council come and challenge me, and they come with the statistics. People just mark once, twice, they never go back. So that instead of getting teachers who are marked over the years to make observations that can enrich the examining, the marking, and even the teaching, we have always just new beginners. Marking, after some short while, they go away. Because you would expect somebody who is doing his 20th year marking. That is a rich resource. They can make very serious observations from the experience I've gathered over the 20 years, 15 years, 10 years in marking, that will inform new approaches to examining students, to marking, to teaching, you know. But we are just lazy people. We do things without seriousness, with a lot of impunity. The people in charge of this sector just eat the money. And treat teachers like they are just rubbish.
Prof, there are countries where teachers are revered as gods.
Of
there
course.
are countries where bakers are actually considered as one of the best actually occupations. Those kind of countries, with the casual nature in which our government handles education sector. Do you think?
Yet we are very proud to cite examples of successful countries where education is the best. Finland, where without then we hide the one part that teachers there are treated very well. We only say education is very successful. Look at the education system, the children, the product, South Korea. But we don't say that the teachers there are treated well in terms of welfare. Yeah, teachers are worst treated public servants in this country. And then we expect the same teachers to produce the leaders of this country tomorrow. We are jokers.
Now, let's wait and see what the government actually will do in
this is not to incite anybody.
Of course, we're not inciting.
Teachers must also know it's not just about the government. It's also about their children. These are their children. So even as you may have grievances, don't just boycott marking. You go on, mark. And but let both sides be a little more serious. Let teachers be serious so that you don't stop in the middle of an exercise. Although unfortunately in this country, unless you push something in that direction, nobody ever listens. Unless doctors go in the streets, people don't want to know they need to be paid well. They need facilities where they work, which is unfortunate. But we are not supporting that. boycotting marking in the middle of that exercise. That's not good. But nevertheless, we must not condone the impunity in the sector.
And definitely, we don't expect that
And
will
teachers have to be treated well in marking, and generally, we are a country that pays an MCA more than a professor, and that is not, that cannot be allowed to pass. Not that MCA has bad people; they are very good people. But surely, how do you esteem yourselves and your country when the most educated, your professor, earns less than an MCA? There's always hierarchy, because we are a society that has agreed in hierarchy. So if there's hierarchy, how do you get somebody who has not even been to school and pay them better than from the same coffers?
That's right.
If it is the private sector can pay who they want in the manner they want. But from the same kitty, you get 200,000 and give a professor, and then get 350,000 and give an MCA. From the same kitty. You are not a serious person.
That's why now professors have decided to become MCS down there, and MPs. And
you want policemen to guard you very well, and you pay them peanuts. No, we are shooting ourselves in the foot. We must pay teachers well. Countries that do well pay teachers well. Countries that take security serious pay their police very well.
Now, sticking to matters education, Prof, and especially I want us to focus on higher learning in this country. Recently, the president made some statement. He said very well that we will scrub HELB and then come up with some sort of a merger between HELB, TVET, and of course the university funding so that he comes up with what he actually calls the National Skills and Funding Council. Now, a number of stakeholders in the education system of our country have come up to actually criticize what the president has decided to do, and they are saying here that one, it was ill-timed, and they're saying that one, we would experience a lot of challenges in as far as funding and division of funds is concerned with all this. And the president said that he lauded his kind of approach, and he said that this move to come up with one body that will cater for all this kind of stuff will actually enable an increment of even the HELB from the current 11 billion to 22 billion. Now, let me ask you, do you believe those who are opposed to this kind of program, or do you believe the president, or do you have your own stand as an individual?
I think debate is healthy. Questioning the way HELB is run, I support the president. It's healthy. Funding of university education is not something that's a problem in this country. It's a problem in America. It forms platform of campaign in America. It has been an issue in the UK. University funding and university loans is not a small matter anywhere in the world. Therefore, a debate is okay.
You're talking of going by how HELB is run. How is it run?
HELB has a lot of problems. I agree with the president. The most obvious problem with HELB is that the money is little vis-a-vis the student population. The next most obvious issue is that, and because the money is little, students don't get enough. But the most obvious and the most silly thing is that when HELB has little money, it continues to invite different groups to partake of the little they have. Initially, HELB was dealing only with undergraduate students doing their first degree in public universities. Then they expanded through this populism that is stupid in this country. You know, you can be populist to extinction. Don't try to think you can please everybody. Then they say, oh, let us bring on board private university students. They are Kenyans, but it doesn't make sense. It stands logic on its head. Because the whole idea of a scholarship or a bursary or help or a loan like that is that in society there will be children who will pass well, but they don't have the financial ability to pursue their studies. So government studies comes in to assist them by way of bursaries, awards, and in our case, this help. You get the logic now. So you cannot get someone who did not succeed to pass the exam to the level required, and then bring him in, you want to fund him. So that the money should have given the person who is deserving. Instead of them getting 60,000, they are now forced to get 30, because you are sharing the money between the person who deserves and the other one who didn't deserve. And then what the president is saying, We do not draw a distinction between the a child who stays in Modaiga and the one who stays in Korogosho. A boy is coming from Lavington to go and take loan help, like the president is saying, just as the one from Kayole. Surely this should be obvious. So help has extended between, starting with the undergraduate public universities, has moved to undergraduate private universities, has embraced postgraduate degrees up to I don't know what level. It has now expanded to TVET, and yet they don't have money. Why don't you concentrate on the core, on the few the government must sponsor, those who are passed well but cannot afford education, and clearly draw a distinction between those who can pay and those who can't pay. So those are the things the president is raising. They are good, but doesn't mean you have to abolish help the way the president is saying. And when you say you abolish, you throw scare and panic. Because you have not given the timeline. You are saying I'm dissolving. Say no, the country is going to have a conversation around this help issue, around the many bodies responsible with the university and TVET. Can't we merge and have one? Can't we have a new way of funding education? Can't we have a new way of giving? Let's have a conversation. As you bring in the country, so that you don't spread fear and panic. When the UK tried, there were riots and demonstrations. So what the president has done is good, but saying we are abolishing is wrong.
And that is
the language of the 1960s and 70s.
And that is what I was wondering. Can the government increase the funding of the students, actually those who are vulnerable and who cannot actually afford?
There's no point of increasing the funding before you sort out the mess. Even if you increase and you are giving it to everybody, it can never be enough.
Should we focus on abolishing help that was actually constituted in the constitution, or should we now focus on reforming it?
We reform. You need to reform the education sector, the higher education sector, the university sector. You need to reform. But you ask for my opinion. My opinion, all this is irrelevant. A third world country like Kenya cannot do justice to its education until it is free, from primary to university. That's what Raila was talking about. Free. Education must be free, from a primary to education, to university.
Talking about
that's the only way you can improve access.
Talking about that, Prof. The other time, CS Machogu, actually the cabinet secretary in charge of education, hinted at perhaps the government stopping funding the universities or other institutions of higher learning, and actually that was also kind of elicited mixed reactions from Kenyans. And here we are, the president actually made a statement recently, and he said that you cannot pretend and tell us that you can pay 100,000, rather 200,000 for your child in nursery, in a primary, that is a private school. In high school, you take them to the best of the schools, and then you still pretend and expect the government to now pay for you the university kind of stuff. And I was wondering, why do you blanket the whole thing? Because literally, there are people who've learned in public schools all the way from primary. There are boys down there at Luambei, perhaps at Luambei Primary. I wonder whether there is something like Luambei Primary School. Yes. Then they went to a nearby secondary school there, and then they actually worked hard to make sure that they find themselves in the university. So does it mean, is the president justified in kind of clouding this kind of judgment and then putting all these people together and wanting now everybody to cater, or rather, how is he going to face this kind of problem?
It's not as simple as the president thinks. It's not true that everybody who takes their child to an academy can afford to pay at the university. It's not true. Some people take there and they pay through blood, thick. Toa your blood kwa nini? Jadi toa hapo blood, you know, YouTube. Some people pay through a lot of struggle. So it's not true they are rich. Some people have resources to take their children through high school and pay a lot of money, but then they lose their jobs. Okay? Disease strikes in the family. You spend all the fortune of the family on medical insurance. So it's not true that everybody who afforded at lower levels can afford at higher levels. It's not true. It's a fallacy. Okay? It's not logical. It's a fallacy there. The best thing, because if you don't take care, we run the risk of growing the rift between the rich and the poor. The rift in it is two meaning. First of all, the gap is going to be wider and wider, and we will soon encourage conflict between those who have in society and those who don't have. So we must not play it in that manner. We must narrow and finally bridge the difference between the poor and the rich, especially on matters of education. When I was growing up, parents sacrificed to take their children to school because people believed when your child goes to school, your poverty will come to an end. Okay? That, of course, has proved us wrong, those who thought like that. But what government will need to do is to avoid anything that tends to push the country into operating two sets of citizens. Those who can afford, those who can. Let me tell you, when universities increase fees, some students don't take up their chances, their places. It's a fact. You can move in universities and fine. Yeah. So when you say people should pay, and you are not very clear about who is rich and who is not rich, you may lock out many children out of university. So the bottom line, give Kenyans free education. This country can afford.
And we can afford that.
We can afford.
Definitely.
All this money being stolen by the admission of government itself and the World Bank. We steal 30% of our budget. Currently, that's 1 trillion shillings. If we can allow thieves to steal half and we remain with 500 billion, that's more than you need to finance free education. As an extra on what we are already doing.
Now, Prof, all this goes back to what we call the government policy and actually on governance and everything. Why do you think it's very difficult for the government, especially during the campaign period, to come out here and tell us this is it? If we, for instance, William Ruto, when I get to power, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to lift the ban on GMO, and there it is. I'm going to actually abolish help and such kind of measures that we are actually seeing there. Why is it that they do hide, and then as they get to power, then now they actually show the citizens they are now.
You are like saying the tobacco industry can willingly write on the tobacco packet, cigarette packet, on the cigarette packet, that smoking is harmful to your health. It can destroy your lungs. And on those producing whiskey, they should write there on their own volition that this is harmful to your liver. They won't sell it. So a man campaigning for leadership, they will not tell people I will introduce GMO, that I will remove help, that I will remove subsidy on education. They can't say that.
Ban mitumba?
I will ban mitumba. They can't, because that will cost you. Yeah. So they are always cutting around those.
And then they wait for it.
But these things catch up with them, because there's always another election ahead. Yeah.
And they'll come with the same narrative, and of course,
sometimes people forget. Sometimes Kenyans forget.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we are still waiting for the government to see actually what is it that is going to do in matters concerning education of this country. And of course, we are seeing here that education is the greatest equalizer, and as much as times have changed, but then there are a number of Kenyans who still believe that it is only through education that they can achieve success, because always the contrary of that, they say that if you think education is expensive, then perhaps try ignorance. We as a country do not want to try ignorance. We hope that our president and the entire leadership of this country will see to it that they make education as less expensive as possible, or as free as Prof here actually puts it. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to stop that point, but we still encourage you to contact us and talk with us here at Herman Manyora. Of course, you may leave your comments down here so that we may know what you think about each and everything that is taking place in this country and what you want us actually to cover for you. Have a very, very happy new year. We wish you the best. My name is Evans Okinyi.
Thank you.